Welcome to the Indie Women Podcast, where we introduce you to the fearless women taking their filmmaking careers into their own hands, showing you how indie films get made. And here's your host, Heather Turman.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Indie Women Podcast, a show dedicated to the women in the indie film world who have found success bringing their projects to life on their own terms. I'm your host, Heather Turman, and I sincerely hope you've been enjoying these episodes. I know I have. So I'm just gonna get into it this week. I had such an incredible time talking with this incredible lady. I felt like this episode could have gone on for hours, but alas, I cut it short. So I'm looking forward to having her back at a later date. But the guest this week is Mandy Fabian. She is a fantastic director of award-winning shorts, music videos, theater, and web series. And she just wrapped her debut feature film, Jess Plus None, which is what we talk mostly about. The process of getting that film off the ground during COVID. But Mandy she also wrote the Amazon digital series Dropping the Soap, which won Jane Lynch an Emmy for Best Actress in a short form original in 2017. And she also co-created and directed The Young Hillary Diaries, which was Lifetime's first digital series. So this lady really knows her stuff. Plus, she was just such a pleasure and a joy. And I felt like we got to really touch on, how sometimes it can take a long time to find your place in the entertainment industry. I know I certainly identified with, Mandy's, start that she got in acting and comedy and, all the different facets of the industry that she's had a hand in and has learned have ultimately led her to being a fantastic director. And so I identified with that. I identified with her journey, and I certainly hope you guys do too, because she's awesome, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this and learn a lot. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Mandy Fabian.
Hello. Hi, Mandy Fabian. Welcome to Indie Women.
Hi. Thank you, Heather. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you. As I, shared, amazing Amy Ulrich put us in touch, and she's just like,
oh God, she's a superwoman.
She is. She's absolutely a superwoman. But I had known your name already, and I shared with you via email that we had literally, I asked a friend of mine, Larry LeBeau, who runs New Filmmakers LA, for director references. And he had already mentioned someone, and we met with them already and offered the job. And then he follows up and says, oh, also Mandy Fabian. And so you've been in because then I watched your stuff and I really loved it, and had heard about Dropping the Soap at the time and all this stuff.
Oh.
And so and then when Amy brought you up, I was like, oh, well, I feel like I definitely need to meet that person, especially.
Yes.
So it's a pleasure to meet you.
And a pleasure to meet you, because I was a fan of your movie.
Thank
but
you.
I didn't get to, I actually, I know Jillian.
Okay.
Happy to take a silver medal behind her. She's fantastic. No, she's great. And so, so I was equally excited. I was like, oh my God, this is a writer of that fantastic film. So that's cool.
Thank you. Jillian, she definitely, she's a workhorse in this industry, and she's amazing at what she does, and so generous. So we were definitely lucky to have her. So thank you so much. I generally get to, as we get started into the podcast, the first thing I usually start off with is like, how did you get started in the industry? Like, tell us how you got started in this beast of entertainment.
It is such a beast, isn't it? It's kind of it was kind of a series of like fun little miracle stories. Like, like from the time I was a kid, I was one of those kids that was like, feeding my horses in the country and like talking out loud in character, like, Margaret, I must leave you. I'm in love with another woman. Oh, Henry, like doing accents and little scenes. And I was always that weirdo kid,
Uh-huh.
And I used to make my mom laugh by like, doing impressions of Muppets and cartoons and voices. And so I actually started off as an actor, and that was just, and I actually got my first professional gig as an actor because I was like, okay, I'm an actor. I want to be in film. So so how do people get into film? Like, where do people in the film industry go? And I was like, oh, they go to the movie theater. So I got a job as an usher in a movie theater.
I love it.
And then, yeah. And then it was like a special movie theater. It was like the fancy movie theater in Austin, Texas, called the Arboretum. And it had like, you know, like an open sky in the lobby that had rainstorms every 20 minutes. It was a big deal. Very nice.
Totally.
Yeah. Anyway, we had to make those announcements that ushers make before the movie theater, which is like, thank you for coming to the Arboretum. We know you had a choice of theaters. We're glad you chose ours. And I, one night had written like a rap for it. And so I went down, I asked my manager if I could do it. And I'm not even sure he said yes, but I did it anyway. And I did that announcement as a rap. And then the place kind of went nuts. And then people would come and like request. And I wrote all these other characters where I would do the announcement as like, I had audience participation ones where we like had snapping games. And I just did a ton of them.
Yeah.
And then I got into the local paper because that was a weird thing that was happening in North Austin. And then the local comedy sketch show was having auditions. Did you think of starting
like a rap? Sorry, I just thought, I'm like, did you think of like starting a side like hip hop career named Usher? Like you have very different.
Oh
Usher.
my God. Like a girl, I did not, because like I had no business rapping anyway. Like it was the whitest, like, so it was a terrible version of a rap. Like I really grew up on country music. So it was like, but luckily that my rapping career lived and died with that. And then I ended up auditioning for this professional sketch comedy troupe. And they didn't know if I could do it because I was 16 and they served alcohol. So they checked it out with the city, and it turned out I was allowed to come and audition and maybe be in the company. And I got the job, and then I was working.
That's amazing. At 16, that's so amazing. Yeah.
It was a really kooky, fortuitous, fun. I have to say it started me off on the right foot of just going, oh, just go and play and have fun and kind of just try stuff, you know?
Yeah.
That started out. Now, granted, that's not always fun, as you know, like you get further along in your career and you're like, oh, and sometimes you try stuff and you end up on a stand-up comedy stage and no one is laughing and you're bombing hard. I'm saying this, having a friend of mine, never happened to me.
Of course. They say a comic or anyone really, I think it plays to an actor. I think it plays to anyone, but they say like a comic is only as good as their last show, right? Like when they killed, it's like, and so whenever during my experience with stand-up, it's like when I would have an amazing show, like, and I had like another set later that night, like I almost wouldn't want to do the show because I would want to ride that high for like, you know, a couple of days. Like,
yeah. But it's funny how you get kind of insatiable, right? You create something and people like it. And then you're like, oh, I have another idea. And you've gotten this heady feeling of, oh, I had an idea and then I wrote it down and then I got people to help me make it. And then I showed it to people. And it's interesting. Like, I absolutely I've been doing that nonstop, like ever since doing sketch in Austin. And then when I went to college, I did improv and sketch in college. And I was just constantly like making and doing sketch and trying things. Yeah. And it was kind of addictive, like in a good way, but it was not always successful. That's the funny thing. Like I have done shows where there are fewer people in the audience than there are on stage.
Absolutely.
You know,
yes.
Where nobody laughs, where you get heckled. Like and it's funny to me that there's so much, it's like 90% rejection and awfulness. And yet you're still like, what time should I be there?
Yeah. What time should I be there? Totally. I mean, it is, I mean, it's really, you know, I mean, especially like anything with the stage that's not script. I mean, the stage, even scripted, of course, is, you know, it's really what being alive is about. It's existing in the present moment when you're in it. But like, there's something about it not being scripted or when it's loose that really, you know, it's exhilarating. And I think that is, you know, the most addictive quality to it is it's the exhilaration factor.
That's a great way of putting it. I actually love that because you're right. The most successful work I've ever seen or experienced is the stuff where you're in the present moment.
Yeah.
Like where you really are, like whatever flow is happening is like the inspiration's coming and that moment.
Yeah.
And
it's not related to anything that you thought before, or that, because that's the stuff that kills like improv. Like I dabbled in improv, and they always say, are you a writer? Because it's like, I'm too busy writing in my mind and jumping in to try to like, dun-dun-dun, rather than existing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah, that's tough because, especially if you're a comedy writer.
yes. Yeah.
Right. So, you're really, it's hard to just exist in that space because you're sort of trained to figure out the laugh.
Yeah. And when you see it going in one particular way and you're like, I see where this is going. Wouldn't this be great? And you pop in and it's like, oh, it wasn't going there. Like,
yeah, yeah, for sure. But when you figure that out, like when you figure out the game of it, I agree with you. There's nothing headier than that. Of just going, oh my God, this is an idea that didn't exist 10 seconds ago. And it's now my new favorite idea. And we're going to milk it for all it's worth. Like,
absolutely.
That's really fun. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. So you started with this, so you worked with this professional sketch troupe. So from there, what happened, and how did you end up in Los Angeles? And
I'll go through it quick. It was, I ended up going to college. And I was a film major in college, but I never intended to do anything with that because I was going to be an actress.
Sure.
I wanted to be able to talk to the directors who were obviously going to put me in their films. So but I was a film major. So I learned all about directing and editing and writing and film history. And, I took senior film seminars. I'm like, oh my God, it was, it's not John Hughes. That would have been an interesting seminar. It's the guy who did The Searchers, all the John Wayne movies, John Ford.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's just like, old Westerns. I mean, I was dying. I was like, oh, what a boring thing to study. But I have to tell you, it was amazing. I learned so much about filmmaking. I had no idea that I was preparing for a not so distant future. Right. But then, so I graduated from college and I went to New York as an actress. Because of the work I'd done in Texas, I had gotten an audition for like an all-female sketch comedy show in New York. I didn't get the show, but I got agents. And then I ended up doing a lot of commercials and voiceover, and I was making a living,
Yeah.
But then I came to LA because I was like, because honestly, it was for quality of life.
Yeah.
Like, I was walking my dog back from Central Park one day and I stopped and like, like this, because the sunset was so beautiful. And I just looked at the sky and I was like, oh my God, that's the best thing I've seen all day. And then I realized it was like that big.
Yeah.
And it was like between two buildings. and I was like, oh, I need to go. I mean, I had some voiceover jobs that were sort of ending and I had freedom that I could go. So I'd done all this theater and sketch comedy, and then I came to LA and I thought, I'll transition into television. But I kind of transitioned into like writing. I transitioned it into writing and directing. I wasn't getting hired as an actor. I didn't have an agent, and I was kind of goofy and like, I did plays and things, but I just like, I was finding that I wanted that thing, that heady experience,
creating, right? Which it sounds like from the beginning as Usher, as Mandy Usher Fabian, you were creating an experience, a world. Yeah. But so go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just nonstop doing that. And this is so dumb. I mean, not dumb, but like, I didn't want to go to the Groundlings or whatever because you had to go to school, you had to pay for classes. And I was like,
it's very serious and competitive.
Yes.
I mean, I've taken class there and it's beautiful. And I've told you as a writer, everyone's always like, you're so funny, but also I think you're a writer, like for sure. And so no shade to it, but it's serious. It's a very serious program. Yeah.
Very competitive. I think I didn't do well with competitive. Like I would have folded like a house of cards, like a wall. Just, and there was and it cost all this money and they were going to teach you how to do sketch comedy and improv. And I was like, I was working. I did that as I had already done that professionally and I had already done improv professionally in New York. I was part of this company called Some Assembly Required. And we did all these shows,
I feel like I've heard of
corporate
some
and otherwise.
assembly required.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I probably have. Anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
but just like I was like, that's familiar. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
Isn't it a great name for an improv troupe?
It's such a great name. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, so I had kind of done it for a living. And then when I came out, I didn't want to go back to school for it. And like, so I don't want to hang out with any of those really hip people, because it turned now I have a lot of friends who are groundlings, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should have just sucked it up and taken a class so I could have met you guys. But still, I was nonstop creating anyway. I just wasn't, I was just doing it on my own. Like I would write sketches, and then it was getting to the time where you could sort of grab a
camera
little,
and do it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what was that called? Like High 8 or whatever. Like, I mean, it was,
there was like
one of those little
the DVX 100s and like, we got real,
mini DV.
Yes.
I think I went to like Sammy's Camera, and I bought like a, or maybe it was B&H Photo in New York. And I bought, a very it was like, I'm going to spend my money on this. And I got a mini DV camera, and I used that thing for a long time. Sure. I got a professional deck, and I started, when I came to LA, I started writing songs. I got a guitar, and I started writing all these funny songs, and I was doing that at a friend's birthday party. And a guy came up to me and he was like, can you do 45 minutes of that? And I was like, yeah. And I absolutely could not. I did not have 45 minutes of material. So I had to find somebody who actually did know how to play the guitar, because I only knew those 3 songs that I'd written, that required me to push like one string and go like this. So then I started gigging regularly and doing comedy music shows. And then it started this whole track into, that's where all my creative energy was going. I was doing funny, like hour-long music and comedy. And then I started making music videos.
Okay. Yeah.
Of my songs. So it always came back to it was live theater.
Uh-huh.
And then whatever that inspiration was, like I wanted to be able to share it, I wanted to get it on tape because it was taped at the time, and share it with people. So I kept moving into that direction.
Yeah.
But I was always I think I also started to get the sense that I didn't want to necessarily act other people's material.
100%. I understand that. Yes.
Which that's super weird. Like, I mean,
I think that those people, and because I recognize that I want to personally, I'm always I like to perform, but only if it's either something that's true to me. So somebody's written something that I'm like, yes, that's me. I can do that. Or it's something that I know that I'm right for because I created it and it's my voice. Right.
Yeah.
And actors are just they don't care. Like a real, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I think that's right. I think what was happening is, as I was writing these songs and coming up with I didn't just I wrote silly songs for sure, but I was always trying to kind of I also did political satire, and I had things that I wanted to say. Yeah.
Your writing was a big part of it.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think that's when I started to go, maybe I'm more of a writer than an actor, because I don't just want to channel anything. I was very specific about the kind of message. I was really interested in the message that was getting across and how it was delivered. And like I said, I was editing all my own music videos, partially because who else was I going to get to edit them?
Right.
But also because I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, editing is so fun, and it really has it shapes the final project exponentially. It's it's a big part of it. Yeah.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah. And I think, that's, it took me a minute to make that transition, just because I was like, well, I'm not a director, but I'm going to do this. And I'm not a director, but I'm going to do this. Right. And then it's funny because when I finally got to directing, I mean, I had written a couple spec scripts, and I'd started writing screenplays, and I was really digging that process.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had written a short film that I wanted to do, and I gave it to a producer friend of mine, and she was like, this is great. My company's going to help you. We want to produce this for you. We'll get all the crew. We'll take care of everything. We'll get you, from pre-production to post, to festivals. We will deliver this short for you. We're on board. We're in. The only caveat is you have to direct it. And I was like, okay. Yeah.
Which is so
okay.
the opposite of like what generally, like normally it seems like companies will take something and they're like, oh, no, but you're not an experienced director. So we're going to usher this person in. We're going to have this person. So it's just like, like what a crazy, you know.
It was. And like I said, I always did that stuff because there was nobody else who was going to do it. I didn't think of myself as like some kind of visionary, but I was relentless.
Yeah.
I had an idea and it needed to happen. I had an idea and it needed to happen. And I made shit happen because that was the complete cycle, right? You have this thing and you're like, I got to share it.
Yes. I'm everything you're saying. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I identify with completely. I like even like your whole journey, but continue.
Yeah. But that's where she was like, okay, you need to direct. And it was so crazy. I sat down, I was like, what do you do when you direct a movie? And then I was like, oh, well, you storyboard. And I started to storyboard. And then I realized, oh my God, I did this in college.
Yeah. You've been directing the whole time.
I had forgotten that I was a film major. You know what I mean? Like that was the craziest thing is like, I was like, oh, I already know the editing. I learned about editing and framing and storytelling and script writing, all that stuff. So it definitely made me go, oh, and I have been doing this for a long time. And I do feel like when something is brought to you, like, you know, I could have just been a loudmouth usher at a movie theater and nothing could have happened. Right. Yeah. But that's not what happened. It, you know, somebody came and saw it and then they put it in the paper and then this theater company, like, I feel like sometimes your path does take you.
Yeah. It sounds like you kept answering the call, like your whole time. Yeah. Like you kept answering the call until like finally you're just like, oh, I'm a director. Oh, like, you know, like,
and I still have that. Like I just wrapped a feature and I swear to God, it took that. It really took doing a whole feature for me to be like, okay, I know what I'm doing now. I get it.
Yeah.
You know, like it really did take that long because there's, you know, so much of it is like, ooh, it's nebulous.
But do you wonder, like, because, you know, I think so many people, because like, I feel I identify with everything you're saying because I personally I always have written my own stuff and produced my own stuff. Like I have a need to create something and I just make it happen. Right. In that same way.
Yeah.
And like, I wrote and produced a feature, but I didn't direct it because I was like, well, I don't know that. Right. And Jillian did a great job, but the overall like just lesson is just like, I'm continually creating these stories and never assuming that I would be the appropriate voice to tell them. But do you ever like, you know, because it sounds like what you're saying or what your journey has been is that like deep down in your soul, like you were being called to do this, but there was this, everything else you did, sketch, improv, being in front of the camera, music, editing, writing, like all the different things that then came along, like ultimately served probably to the point that you are so much, your first feature was probably so much better than most people's first feature. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And 100%. Yeah. The actors were like, oh, you really know how to talk to actors. And it's because I was an actor for so long. Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of music in the movie. I'm a huge music buff, live music. And I was a musician. So when I'm talking to a composer and we're discussing a sound or, you know, like I've done albums, so I know how to, I feel like this needs to be higher in the mix or whatever, you know, or like what the overall idea is going to be. Like, I just wasn't able to, I never was confident enough to like take authority. That's the one thing that I would say came last. Like all the skills were handed to me in this fantastic way, but the confidence is the thing that came at the very end.
Sure. Through all the doing,
you know?
Through all the doing, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that really was it. Like because I've been doing it for so long, I'm really like, I have high standards, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of that, the Ira Glass thing from This American Life.
I don't know, but if you say it, maybe. But what was it?
Okay. So Ira Glass did this fantastic thing where he talks about how your taste gets developed over you develop a sense of taste, which is why you make things.
Yeah.
And then what happens is when you start to make those things, your skill set hasn't quite caught up with your taste, right?
Sure.
So you get frustrated, and a lot of people quit because they try to make something and they go, oh, that's bad. But it's not that it's bad. It's just that it takes practice to get your skills to match up with what your idea of something is, right?
100%. Yes.
And even I think about that a lot.
Yeah. Even just the language to articulate it, like when you said the actors all felt like you knew how to talk with actors. And now for the listeners, just to interject about the feature that you just finished directing, is called Jess Plus None.
Yes.
Which stars Scout Durwood, who is a musical comedian.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, because right when you mentioned that you did music, right away, I was like, oh, and that's so interesting. Were you drawn to Scout? Does her character, is that character involved in music in the story?
No.
So
in fact,
do you think you were like in some way, like just magnetically attracted to Scout because she really embodies a lot of the things that you were talking about in that, like this. Yeah.
I didn't know her as a musician.
Interesting.
She I think she was pitched as a comedic actress. Her agents pitched her for the movie, and I loved her. What I really loved about her was that she was so funny. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, great. She's got that in spades, obviously. And then I saw her, she did this really crazy, kooky comedic film. I don't remember if she directed it, but I think she wrote it, but she's like, did this dramatic turn. It was a funny film, but she really did a lot of dramatic stuff in it.
Yeah.
And she was so interesting. Like, and then it wasn't until I talked with her, I think maybe I saw a couple things on her website. That's when I started to unpack the whole, like, oh my God, she's a talented director and she's an incredible creative. And oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah. I dig the little Merlin hat. That's adorable.
Someone was trying to call me. I'm going to pause for just a second.
Sure.
I'm switch out and tell me if this screws you up. I'm a little worried my phone might run out of juice. Okay. So I need to plug it in.
No worries.
Instead of my headphones for a second.
Sure. These things happen.
See how that goes.
And even if you can't have your headphones, that's good too. I've had people without it and it ends up working okay.
Oh. But that's weird, but now it's not. Uh-oh. Well, now hang on. Now can I hear you?
Can you?
Oh, no. Now I'm backed into a corner. Okay, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
How do why did it stop? Why did I not hear you? I apologize.
Oh,
okay.
It's all good.
Well,
this is what this is. Technology. This is what this is.
Oh my God. Yeah, hopefully I won't run out of power. Must be a way to change the audio. Okay, well, that's all right. We'll figure that out.
Yeah, let me know.
I got it. I figured it out.
Oh, yay. Okay. Perfect.
Great.
Perfect.
Cool.
Perfect. So so we were talking about Scout, and you mentioned, that when you first realized her website and that you saw that she was all these other things in addition to a comedic actress. Yeah.
And she actually plays the least wacky person in the whole movie, which is funny because she's like so funny, but she's funny, but plays a very.
She's grounded. Yeah. She's grounded. And I think in her stand-up, she always talks about like whimsy, like whimsical. She's got that, but she's also very grounded. I hear that. Yeah.
Her humor is very dry. Like when I met with her over Zoom and like we talked for like an hour and a half, and I mean, she was just great. And she was so good. And she just brought such a great energy to the set. And I love her. I was so lucky to have her. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. I just, and I didn't even mean, I know listeners are like, who's Scout? And now they're like, but like, Jess Plus One, this is your first feature.
Yeah.
And prior to that, because I feel like I should segue back real quick, how you got to the place where you are getting to direct a feature. So you started directing. Did you start with shorts? I watched one of your shorts, but I know you had 3 others. So take me through. Yeah.
So I did the first short I did, the one that the producer was like, you have to direct this. It was called Killing Vivian.
Okay.
With Missy Pyle and Paul Whitten.
Great.
Oh
Paul Whitten wasn't stuck. He was excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's so talented. He's in Dropping the Soap too.
Perfect.
Dropping the Soap. Yeah. Oh my God.
Genius.
I just write anything for him. He's so funny and such a generous actor. Missy is great. Like I had such a lucky break on my first short because, they enjoyed the material and we did it in a couple days. And like, it was just so fun. We had such a good time. And it was a story that it was based on a true story. Paul, his dog got sick and he was going to have to maybe put his dog down. And I grew up on a ranch and I'm also a total jackass. So I felt bad. I was trying to make him feel better. And I was like, he goes, I just don't want to have to be the one to put my dog down. And I was like, I'll do it. I'll go to your house. I'll get your dog. You'll never have to even know he was there. Like, I'll help you. And he looked at me with this, like, he was like, that's a really fucked up thing you just, I'm sorry, can I say the F-bomb? He was like,
oh yeah, you can say whatever.
He was like, that is a weird thing you just said to me. And I was like, I know, what's wrong with me? I'm a monster. And we started laughing so hard and we were like, that feels like a short film.
Totally.
So that's what Killing Vivian is it's a woman who's like insisting on killing her best friend's dog. Even though the dog starts to get better. Then Missy plays this crazy woman. Anyway, so that was my first one.
Okay.
And then I caught the bug. I mean, the directing aspect of it, to your point earlier about when you write something and wanting something to really be in your voice, that was my first experience with having written something where every frame, every timing of every joke, every choice of wardrobe and set, and I mean, everything was mine.
Yeah.
So I at least got, I mean, some things didn't work because I had messed up or I forgot to get something or whatever. But the things that are on that screen are things that I said, if in my perfect world, that's how that joke would work to the best of my abilities,
Yeah.
And I think, that was very satisfying to me as a
creative. You were always doing the bits and the pieces, and this was getting to do the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And also having done live stage for so long, right? You're constantly throwing things out there and you get a laugh and then that moment's gone, right?
Yeah.
But this was like, you got to create something and then share it,
yeah.
And people can still go see that movie. It's, and you get to actually think about how a joke is going to work as opposed to just like trying something and moving on.
Yes, so 100%.
Honing jokes is like one of my favorite things. That's where I get very nerdy. I'm not nerdy about cameras. I am so nerdy about performance and jokes.
That's so important though. The performance performances are what make something, I mean, first and foremost, independent look like real, I mean, it's just, I mean, not that it's not real, but like acting and story are the most important. And if you can fucking finesse jokes and get jokes to work and play, then, you're off to the races. That's excellent. Yeah.
I always tell people like, cause I did that one. And then I did a second short film and that started like win some awards. And I got into the Sony Diversity Fellowship program. And
so fun.
And
yeah.
It was fantastic. I got lucky. I got very lucky. I got rejected from plenty of places too. I mean, but it, I always tell people, they're like, gosh, what's your secret? And I'm like, well, my secret is like, they're like, how do you make something funny? I'm like, if you think it's funny, it's funny.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
that really
You
is
have to genuinely believe it's funny. It's when people try to manipulate comedy for the sake of the audience is when it's like, that's not going to work, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like you, if you're loving it and it's making you laugh, that's a good sign that it will probably make somebody else laugh too.
Yeah.
And if not, at the end of the day, it still makes you laugh. Like,
Yeah.
that's, but the other thing I always say is I am lucky that I know good actors.
Sure.
And I'm really picky. I'm really picky about that because I know that even when I haven't been that good of a director yet, my actors are really good.
Sure.
And that makes you look so professional.
But you have the eye and the instinct to know good actors. I like that in and of itself. Like, the one thing I pride myself on is I always feel like I have a good eye for talent. Like, the one thing, like, if everything else is questionable and everything else is objective, I feel like, or subjective, like, I feel like the people that I really tap and I'm like, that person is they have something that, like, I really see them. And no matter how green they are a few years later, you know, once they've worked and honed their skills, sure enough, they blow up and I'm like, told ya, you know, like, it's the one thing that I feel like I can say. And I think that is a skill, you know, and something that makes for the best, you know, people behind the camera and directors and creators in and of itself is being able to spot talent and know what, not only that somebody is talented, but where those talents are best utilized, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Being able to pivot based on how they work, you know, really understanding what they are bringing to the character, what their version of the character is, and not trying to force them into doing something, that's not as good for their toolbox, right? Like, that stuff is so fun to me. I mean, I worship actors, like, and you know, it's interesting. Like, so the lead of Jess Plus None is Abby Miller. She plays Jess, and she's really known for drama.
Oh, that's great. I love hearing that. Yeah.
Yeah, she hasn't done hardly any comedy, but I did a pilot with her. I directed a pilot that a little indie pilot, Friends pilot, and they were friends, and she came in and did this comedic role, and she was hysterical, like, just so funny and so really gifted. So then she came and did a couple screenplay readings for me, and every single time she would do a reading and it would be over and people would be like, oh my God, that Abby, she's really special.
Sure.
But she never got a chance to do comedy. So this was a big kind of leap for her and for me. I mean, I knew she could do it because I knew she would just bring something really interesting, you know?
Sure, yes.
But like, she was very much like,
yeah, so you had to make her believe. Yeah, you had to get her to believe that she could do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she did a great job.
Amazing. Yeah, the trailer. So I checked out the trailer. I love it. I can't wait to see it. And this is like the first trailer because you're still like editing and stuff. And it's so good. And it's so like, there's so much that I want to know. It leaves me wanting to know, you know, what happened. So the premise, well, first, so you did these shorts. So how did you get to do Just Plus None?
I did 5 shorts, I think. I mean, like I said, again, shorts for me were my workout.
Sure.
Like, I would come up with an idea, and usually I was always thinking of ideas that were realistic. Like, I was never the girl who was like, I'm going to do a sci-fi short and raise $50,000.
Sure.
I was like, nope, I'm going to do a short I can shoot for $5,000, and I'm going to do it in a house that I know I can get, or a location I know I can get.
Totally. You're speaking my language. When I see somebody raising 50 grand for a short, I'm like, why are you doing that? But sometimes it pays off. No shade. Well, like, sometimes they get themselves then a big sci-fi deal, but I'm just like, oh my God, just tell a simple story for nothing and get better. But yeah.
That was my approach too. Like, I really wanted to get my chops up. I wanted to, work with different DPs and crew and different, that to me was invaluable. Because again, I knew I was fighting, weirdly, even though I had been doing it for so long, I knew I had low confidence. I knew the thing that would give me confidence was not pretending that I knew what I was doing, but actually knowing what I was doing.
Yes.
Actually having solved obstacles and so that when people were talking, I knew what everybody was talking about, you know. And I while I was doing shorts, I was also trailing a bunch. Like I trailed on multicam comedy sets and I trailed on hour-long drama sets.
Great.
Weirdly, probably not the genre I would actually work in, right? Hour-long drama and multicam, even though I loved multicam so much, I would do it in a heartbeat. But even just I wanted to know everything. I'm a weirdo. Like I also shop at 7 different stores for one dress. Like I kind of, I was going to be an actor. I was like, but I have to know what the director and the editor I want to know everything before I do anything.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of part of it too, is like, so I did these shorts and just whatever I could do, people would hire me to direct a little, like, I want to do a series. Like, will you shoot a teaser trailer? Yes, I will. Like I was constantly, spending my weekends off shooting little things for people because it was that insatiable kind of, someday there's going to be a question that there won't be a question that I don't have an answer to, And so that was how, once I had done a bunch of short, and then even like during COVID, we were supposed to shoot the movie Just Was None.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to start doing that August of 2020. Right. But there had been also a lot of like, there was still sort of a nebulous plan. There was like, we'll get $10 million, not $10 million. We'll get $1 million in a star. We'll, we were still kind of raising money.
It
was a little bit like
things until, I totally know that experience. And
oh my God.
And almost when those things fall off is almost when it really comes together,
100%. Yeah. Like I swear to God, my bio for the last 7 years has been like, and she's in pre-production on her first feature. Like, because I was like, technically we were. So then COVID happened, obviously. And that turned out to be great.
Yeah.
Well, not for the world.
Sure.
Not that it exists, but in terms of this movie, we ended up shifting our schedule to doing it. We just shot it this last April. Amazing. And because of COVID and the timing of it, we got the camp that we shot at we could afford it.
Yeah.
And because of COVID, there were more crew members available who were like, hell yeah, you want me to go camp with you for 2 weeks in the woods? I'll do that.
Totally, right?
Yeah, and people were excited. We were also the way the timing happened is we were all vaccinated, and it was just right at that cusp where we went from, oh my God, this is going to be really hard because we have to do all the COVID protocol, and we still did the COVID protocol, but we had so much. The movie shot 90% outside. We were all vaccinated.
Yep.
We were potting up. We were literally potting. No one came in and out.
Yeah.
So it was this amazing situation where we could all just relax and kind of feel normal.
This global pandemic was so kismet for your movie. I'm saying that like darkly, but honestly though, like, for all the different things that you just laid out outside a campsite, and it was potting, nobody could come in. Like if there's ever a time to do that, a global pandemic, like for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really great. Like, and things just hadn't gotten crazy busy. So we had equipment was available to us.
Yeah.
Like it was, the timing of it was really great. And I had done, it got canceled back in August. And I kind of honestly, we'd been hustling a feature for so long. I was like, I'm going to let it go. And I'm just going to go back to doing what I love, shorts.
Yeah.
And I shot that last short last weekend, which was a drama.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that, about the shift from doing comedies to then doing the drama. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
I loved it. I did that because I had a location.
Yeah. That's how I always work too. Whenever I come up with an idea and I'm like, and I know where I can shoot it. Then I call up everyone I know. Yep. Do you want to shoot? Do you want to shoot? Do you want to shoot? Yep.
And I'm not afraid of the whole, let's do this with 6 people and just figure it out. Like,
yeah, me either. It's exhilarating again. Yeah.
I love that. I love the problem solvingness of like, well, we only have a goat and 3 actors and 4 days. What can you do? Give me a minute. I really like that. But that was kind of that thing of like, even asking people, because it was October of 2020, and it's not like COVID was over. But there was a little bit of like, would you feel comfortable coming on a set? Like, figuring that out and then doing my first drama, kind of my second drama, but yeah. I loved it. I loved every second of it. I loved writing it. I felt such a sense of like, it was personal to me. Like my mom had passed away in December of 2019, right before COVID hit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was feeling this grief, and it was a film. And then the whole world was plunged into grief, right? Everybody was sitting there going, I can no longer live the life that I thought I was supposed to live today.
Yeah.
Right. We were all longing for this reality that we couldn't have anymore.
Yeah.
And that was my experience of grief, where I was like, I know people die, but I have this weird feeling of like, I want my old life back. I want that. I want it back. Right.
And that really resonates in that film. It really does feel like that, like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cause it's really excellent. It's well acted. It's well shot. Like, it's excellent.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. Go ahead.
Again, I'm lucky to be really, really close friends with really good actors. And Nina Hamm, who shot that, who is just a genius. She and I met doing the Women's Weekend Film Challenge. You heard about that?
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah. So, and what is that? And that's like, it's over like a 48-hour period
yeah.
Okay, cool. And are you paired with someone?
Yes. So
okay.
You apply for a position, multiple, like you give your first choice, second, third.
Cool.
I director, actor, whatever, right? Writer.
Yeah.
And so then what they do is they form crews based on people's first and second choices of what they want to do. And I had a crew of 30 women. Amazing. And I was fortunate enough, I'm so lucky to be chosen to direct. I was thrilled.
That's so amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have this crew of 30 women. They toss you a genre on Thursday night at like 6, a genre. And ours was heist.
Oh, wow.
Action heist. Well, and I had told everybody on my team, I was like, all right, listen, whatever genre we get, it's going to be comedy blank.
Yes, sure. I would probably have done the same. Yes, I probably would have done the same. Yeah.
Right? Because I'm like, that's my
playing on your strengths. Sure.
Right? Like comedy Western, comedy horror, comedy heist, comedy, So, and they were all in that same camp too.
Sure.
So
perfect.
They wanted to do a comedy as well. So we were like, okay, whatever we get. So we got heist, and then they write it from 6 o'clock to like 3 in the morning.
Wow.
And then we start shooting the very next day, Friday. So you shoot Friday, you shoot Saturday, Sunday you start editing, and Sunday night you turn it in.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's insane.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
With a score.
Oh my gosh. What?
Oh, what? It's bonkers.
Like, yeah. It's but how bonkers. Incredible too, even just speaking to that, because there's people are automatically probably less precious with everything. Right. And just sort of committing to what we get is what we get. Let's make it the best we can,
Well, and it also was a really great environment of just trusting that people had been chosen for a reason. They were good at what they did, like there was a real autonomy. We were all rooting for each other, helping each other do our best work because we all wanted to. Now it's really, from writing, right? How do you write a good script in 8 hours? Like it's next to impossible.
To impossible, yeah. But it can pour out of you. But it can, if it's something that's organic, it can pour out of you, and but what you're talking about doesn't get a second draft. That's the sort of the caveat.
Yeah. I mean, they actually did. They did some rewrites the next day because it took us a minute to figure out where we were shooting on Friday because we didn't even know what we were shooting until Thursday night, right? We would, as they would sort of come up with ideas and locations, we'd be like, all right, let's figure out where we're going to shoot that. Like we were producing it as they were writing it, and they did a great job. It was really, really cute, funny. It was called I Felt a Thigh or Die. And it was 3 girls who were trying to get into a sorority. Hilarious. And they end up, they need 3 extra spaces in the sorority. So they
Oh, that's so funny.
They basically murdered 3 girls to get into the story. Really cute. Anyway, but Nina was my DP on that, and we had met randomly at Sundance like the year before. I'd never been to Sundance, neither had she. We both go to Sundance, and then we end up on a set together. Like, that feels very fancy. It's very fancy. And then she came and did Last Weekend.
Love it. Yeah, it is beautifully shot and acted, like I said, and directed, and it's, your other work was comedic, so there was that departure. And that, do you feel that, so then getting to go in and do a feature that even a comedy relies on so much heart and you know, do you feel like that helped prep you for that next step?
Yeah, actually, yes. It's funny because when I was in post on my dramatic short, I was like, oh, I am never doing, I'm not doing this again. Because I forgot how many times you have to watch a movie.
Yeah.
To perfect the edit, to get the sound, you have to watch the movie just for quality control a zillion times. And it is the saddest movie, and it wrecked me every time. And it would be like PTSD. I'm like, oh God, don't make me watch it again. It was so emotional.
Yeah.
So for that purpose, I was like, but I will say, yeah, creating there were a couple things. It was an unusual story. Mm-hmm. It was a complete departure from my previous work. So I really had to take ownership of it in a way that with comedies, there might be a little bit more like hoping that people will like it. And with Last Weekend, I was a little bit more like, I'm making a piece of art. And of course I hope people like it, but that's not what this is about.
Sure.
And I had to kind of get inside of it, and I had to create a really safe space for those actors because we were dealing with really tender emotional stuff.
Yeah.
And that was really fun. And I loved discovering how I do that. And then, so that did translate for sure on my set with the feature, because I like to do comedies that are not just broad and yuck 'em up. Comedies, I like to have dramatic scenes too.
Yeah.
So that was a great, like, I used that skill set a lot. Like, I took the actors, we had rehearsal for everything.
Yeah.
When we were doing the feature, like, we would rehearse every scene, we would discuss it. If there was any like sex or, like sexual, intimate, anybody had to be touched or grabbed or kissed or anything like that, we would sit down and we would go over it. Like, what feels comfortable? What's the choreography going to be here? What do you want? Do you want to close? Like, how do you want to do this? And we made sure everybody felt that everybody found something that really resonated for them.
Yeah.
Like, whether it was a phrase or whether it was something in their life or one of my stories that would, that whatever we would connect to that, it would lock them into the moment of what they needed to do. So that then when we got on set, and there were just things that I discovered, like, before our very first, I think it was like our very first shot of this one like pretty dramatic scene that the two leads had to do together. And I went up to him and I was like, you see all these people? Fuck these people. And they kind of looked at me, I was like, fuck these people, you don't care what they think,
Yeah.
And it was this great, like, they were like, yeah. And it just went,
because everyone can connect to that. Everyone can take that experience, that like, yeah, fuck those people. Like, you just like, we all have that in here, those moments. Yeah.
And it was like right for the tone of the scene. They're about to get into it with their best friend. They're going to fight with their best friend. And it just sort of also gave them permission to be bad.
Yeah, totally.
So they didn't have to worry about trying to hit a performance. They got into it. It was great.
Yeah, that's perfect.
It was great. I have to say, like, that the last two experiences really kind of locked that in for me, where I was like, oh, okay, setting that tone on the set, that's important. It does matter.
It matters completely. Totally. And I love hearing that, that like, so it's almost like this huge blessing that you didn't do the feature before you went and did last weekend, because it did prepare you for a different level of setting that tone for the actors.
And
yeah,
in a weird way, because it was something that I hadn't done before, it would have been very easy to fail, I guess, or I loved it so much that I didn't care what anybody thought of it. I mean, that's not great.
No, but it is though. I think that is great. I think that is great because if it's truly authentic to you and it is your project, if you're like, yes, that's it, then like there will be something for people to grab onto, you know what I mean? Because if it's true for you. Yeah.
And I think because I've been doing comedy for so long, I don't think I had that same like, well, I like it. And that means it's done. Like, I like it. And that means this is what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
And so that movie really gave me I don't care what anybody says. I love that film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
And so now going into doing a feature that's, it's offbeat. It's, it's definitely a quirky movie.
Yeah. There's, I showed my wife really quickly because she was in Stuck and I was like, oh, can I show you? This is who I'm interviewing on the podcast. And I showed her the trailer. And there's one scene in the temp trailer, the first trailer right now. She was just like, oh my God. She was like, and I mean, she was feeling every experience that was in it. And she was just like, she was like, and she was like, that's mortifying. Like, just like, like really great. Feeling it. Yeah. And I think that's so great and a testament, to what could only exist now and in the full story. That there's meaning there. There's stuff to connect to from the trailer. So that's really, yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah, good. Cause yeah.
That's the hope. You want people to look at it and go, I want to see this movie.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, the things in the movie that I wanted to make a rom-com where the lead ends up single and happy.
Sure.
Because I hadn't seen that, right? You always end up like, right. They always end up, and then now that I'm good enough, I can be with someone,
Yeah.
And I think it's like, the win
doesn't need to be that way. Yeah.
The win is loving yourself. The win 100%. Is owning your life. And, so that was something I wanted to do. And there's like a lot of people. Yeah.
Well, so did you write Just Plus None? Did you? Okay, beautiful. Oh, that's so rad. Awesome. So, yes. And where was what was the inception? Was it based on like personal life? Were you trying to write something that you could shoot for a lower budget? What were the different, I guess, just the different points of inspiration?
Yes to all of it.
Okay,
yes.
Sure.
I wrote a movie that initially, of course, I was like, if I have to get an RV and 10 of my friends and we sleep in tents and we rehearse the shit out of this and we shoot it in real time over 3 days with like a doinky iPhone, I don't care. I am making this movie, right?
Yes.
It originally was written, it was called Intense. That was the original title.
That's so great.
Yeah. And
so is Just Plus None, like literally. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, I really had that in mind, that I wanted to write something that I could shoot, because I had written these other movies that people love the scripts, but in terms of an indie film, you kind of would have needed $1 million.
It's so hard. Yeah. And it's so hard. It's literally, I mean, that's my writing partner and I, we sold a script in 2015 and it was studio level budget. We did manage to sell it to a small production company. But he hasn't made it, so it's like that thing of like, so the goal going in was like, let's write a one location, immediately, like, because you have such a desire to tell stories. And when there's so many challenges just with budgetary constraints, so
yeah,
whittle it down. And I think sometimes people get afraid where they're like, oh, well, but I want to tell this, and what's a movie without a car chase or whatever. They get in their head about all these elements that ultimately, if you boil everything down, you don't need those things, in the right in the right story, those things of course add value and serve, you know, the narrative in a way.
Yeah.
But they're not needed, and you can still tell an effective, heartwarming, meaningful story that's entertaining and people want to watch again and again and again without all of that, you know.
Yeah, and I loved campgrounds too. Like to me, that's instant production value. Every time I would go to a campground, I would be like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Hold on a second. What?
Hi.
What are you guys doing? I'm in the middle of a Zoom.
Oh. Bye.
Go to bed. I love you. Good night.
We would maybe watch the first.
No.
Aww.
No. Go get in bed.
We have 41 minutes left.
Go get in bed. Thank you. You're like creeping up like this. So I was like, well, campgrounds are beautiful. And every time I was there, I think I want to shoot something here. I think it's so naturally gorgeous. And you know, I to your point, like I was really inspired. I'm inspired by talkie movies like Blue Jay, the Mark Duplass and Sarah Paulson movie. I loved.
Yeah.
The Big Chill is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yes.
And it's just people talking.
I love talking movies too. You're a woman after my own heart. Everything that you're saying, I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Campgrounds, talking, yes.
Movies about relationships and nature and all those things. Like to me, I basically wrote the kind of movie that I would want to see anyway.
Which is always a winning way, because like you said, if you think it's funny, it'll be funny. If you like the story, people will like the story.
Yes. And then I had, you know, there were interesting things that had happened in my life. There were some things in the past that had happened. And there were a lot of the ideas, like every character sort of has a little piece of me, you know, stories or ideas or themes that I wanted to explore. I wanted to explore really flawed people. You know, I was a real hot mess for a while. And
Same.
I met well. I just was so... I didn't have my shit together emotionally. I mean, like I paid my bills and I wasn't a drug addict or anything. Not that's a bad thing. I love a lot of drug addicts that are recovery. But you know what I mean? Like
100%. Yeah. Especially 20s and like into early 30s. It's like, you know, you don't have your emotional world yet because you haven't really figured out what the emotions mean yet, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was like a combination of, I had one of my closest friends in the world got engaged right around the time I was dying of the worst heartbreak ever.
Oh.
So and that was hard because I was like, I don't know if I can be happy for her. I want to be, but I'm a monster. I don't know if I can be, you know, I wanted to like kind of, there was exploring a little bit of that and exploring also how your friendships change, you know, after high school and college, like after 10, 15 years, you know, are you friends because you've been friends for 15 years or because you actually would be friends? Like what matters in a friendship? I had a friend that the thing that really inspired it too was I had a friend who kind of broke up with me, like was sort of like done with me for a second. We're fine now. But I had never had that before. And it was that interesting. I wanted to explore like, what do you do when you've hurt someone and now you have to deal with the fact that you've been doing things that have been hurting people. Like, what do? Do you end up spiraling into self-loathing, or do you own that you did some things, but you're still going to be okay? Like you make mistakes and everybody gets to move on. And that was sort of and everybody in this movie makes mistakes. Everybody does something, you know, it's sort of some of it's circumstantial and unintentional. Some of it's very much intentional and then they regret it. Like, so I really wanted to explore that. Like, you know, we're messy. We're messy. All monsters in some ways, right?
Yes. And we all are not limited to one exactly. Like we all make mistakes and we all do bad things or do things, regrettable things, I should say. But it doesn't mean that that's who we are always, you know?
Right. And I actually like there were the theme kind of that I wanted to explore is like all monsters are worthy of love. Like these people are anyway, right? Like the lead really does some things that you're like, oh no, but she's infinitely lovable.
Yeah.
The only thing, and when she gets on board in the movie, like she learns that she figures out that she is lovable. Like,
Yeah.
and that's something that turns everything around for her. It's
That's
interesting.
amazing. That is the life lesson. Like, that's literally the life lesson. I think that when people, do the work to get to that place, it literally changes their life around. So could not be a more important theme, for a film.
I am such a sucker for life lessons too. Like, I love movies that do that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I love movies that show you, oh God, I hadn't thought of a friendship that way, or I hadn't thought of, the way that we judge other people's relationships. I hadn't thought of it that way. Like,
Yeah, no, 100%. And I love that you mentioned, the fact that, that you wanted to touch on that aspect about friends, and like, why are we still friends? Or like, is it just because of, this past stuff? Do we even still relate to each other? Like, what is adult friendships after after you evolve as a person? So also a very prevalent, I think, thing, because I feel like people, especially after COVID, are, reevaluating the people in their life and why they keep certain people around, or just what's important to us and what means something. So,
and also, like, what do you expect from your friends? Like, I love my friends so deeply, I mean, but none of us are perfect, right?
Yeah.
So how much do you accept? What is the whole point of it, right? Are you only friends with somebody because they behave the way you want them to? What is it exactly? It's a question, and
it's
this
a very
is the
interesting question.
Movie too is, what's that?
Oh, I just said, and it's a very interesting question, of one that people could, I feel like, philosophize about for a long time. Yeah.
And the main, even though like I call it a rom-com, and there's a lot of different romantic relationships in it. I think there's two main relationships, and it's Jess with her best friend, and then it's Jess with herself.
Yeah.
Those are actually the two most prominent relationships in the movie. I also think that's cool, right? A whole movie about, like, it's like, really is about every kind of love.
Yeah, 100%. And also, one informs the other. Jess's relationship with herself must inform her friendship, and her friendship must inform her relationship with herself, so there is that. That's I love that. I love that so much. Yeah, I love it so much. So we've only got a couple minutes, but I feel like I'm definitely gonna have you back, and let's do it when Jess Plus None is out, so we can, like, send people to it completely, because I know people will love it. And you mentioned what's the actor who plays Jess? You said her name, Abby
Miller.
Mm-hmm. Abby Miller.
Abby Miller's Jess. Mariel Scott plays her best friend. Yeah.
Beautiful. And Scout Durwood. Yeah. The cast is amazing. And if people look these people up, I'm sure will fall in love, because it's like very, just magnetic. Like, it really feels like something. Yeah. So I personally very much look forward to this coming out.
Yay, thank you so much.
Yeah. And what are you working on now? When this is edited, do you already have something else in the back seat that's gonna come up, or are you holding off until this is out in the world?
I am focusing on this one. I have a couple of movies. There's one that's like another really offbeat rom-com. It's called Bromance.
Love it.
And it's a comedy love story between a straight guy and a gay guy.
Love it.
Where I really want to explore that. Like, sexuality is it's a huge theme in all of my stuff. Like,
sure.
I love it. I just think it's so fun and such a fun romp, and it makes such a big deal out of.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do know.
Nothing is a certain way. Who wants things to be a certain way? That's so boring.
Yeah, because they say this, and so it's just like we have to accept things. But yeah, no. I love that.
So there's that, and I mean, I have a couple scripts that I have that exist already that I'm interested in exploring. But I'm honestly taking it as it comes. I'm going to get this movie. We'll be done. We're going to submit it to Sundance. So we'll see what happens.
That's so inspiring, just in terms of the fast turnaround, because you shot it in April.
Yeah.
Which is something that I'm always telling people. Like, nowadays, a film should not take like longer than a year to edit. Like it just shouldn't, you know what I mean?
Well-
If it does, you've made some mistakes or you're not working with the right post team.
Yes.
Because it should not. That's excellent. Congratulations. You're going to get it out and submit to Sundance in time, which for those of you listening, that's like September, you know, it's like the deadline, right? Usually
Yep.
maybe. And yeah, so that's a timely turnaround. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. This was
Yeah.
such a pleasure, Mandy. So people can find you on you've got your website, Mandy Fabian. It's just .com. And then we didn't even talk about Dropping the Soap, which we touched on it with Paul Whitten, but you wrote a hilarious web series that Jane Lynch won an Emmy for.
Yep.
And that's
Dropping
on
the
Amazon.
Soap. Amazon Prime. Yep. It's
Cool.
got fun people in it too. John Michael Higgins. And
Such a cast. John Michael Higgins, Jane Lynch, Paul Whitten. Who else?
Diedrich Bader is in it. Patrick Fabian, my husband Patrick Fabian's in it.
Cool. Yeah, Jillian. She did a role on it. That's right. Okay. Yeah, and Jillian Eminente. Amazing. So everyone should check that out. Check out Dropping the Soap, mandyfabian.com, and look out for Just Plus None.
Just Plus None. Yeah, you can if you want to keep track of the movie, you can follow us on Instagram. It's at Just Plus None.
Perfect.
Or I'm at Mandy Fab.
Cool. Mandy Fab. I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. And I so look forward to getting to know you further and following your work. And yeah, I'm so glad we made this happen.
Me too. Thank you, Heather. Thanks for, getting out there and like spreading the love among the lady filmmakers.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed that indie film is yet another boys club. It feels like I listen to all these other podcasts and it's all the male filmmakers being like, yeah, I went out and I made my own movie. Yeah, I went out and and there's women doing it too. So I'm very happy to be doing this and it's been a blast so far. So
yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.